And I knew. I sold everything, booked the flight. There was nothing fulfilled me really.
It's the ones that tend to do it most drastically, like a real cut, that end up succeeding.
Just a few weeks after I met Guruji, I met my friend, and the question which have been asked, like, are you still smoking? Are you still drinking? That gave me actually the understanding what is the glue of our friendship.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hedonism, and that's it. If that's not there anymore, why were we actually having that relationship?
It exposes you, like you would expose your friends in that moment. I'm sure they cut you off in some sense.
I was in the mountains, it was cold, I was alone in a room with families which I didn't know, but I absolutely loved it. And I just had the feeling like I need a teacher. No matter what, I will fly to that place where this kind of being exists. And then Guruji came. In the moment his hand touched my head, something happened which I never felt in my life before.
Jai Gurudev, Rishi Amara Nimai, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me here.
You're super welcome. And as you know, this is your first time here, so we always begin by introducing a little bit of your background and how you got here. So to share a little bit more so that people understand also like who we all were before we became this version of ourselves. And I think it often sheds a new light and sort of helps people to understand that although we may not look normal now, we once were more similar to them than they think. So please, what was your life like before you joined Bhakti Marga and became who you are today?
So, yeah, my life was pretty normal before, or I was not a monk always.
Really?
Obviously. So originally my parents are from Slovakia,
Mm-hmm.
and when I was 2 years old, we moved to Austria. It was actually 1 year before the Iron Curtain fall between Eastern Europe and Western Europe. So we lived in a very small flat in a not really good neighborhood. My father was trying to find a job, and he wrote actually to the mayor asking for help. So we're in a desperate situation. Please, can you help us? So we have been very happy to move out of the flat. There was police interrogation very often.
Wow.
And so I moved in a much, much better neighborhood. And yeah, then started to go to school. I was in a tourism marketing school. So working in many hotels, very fancy hotels, worked with celebrities, politicians, which it's actually very good that we have this topic today, because I learned a lot
Observing and working with them.
Yeah. And yeah, after the tourism school, I worked also in the bank for 3 years. It was not really my type of work.
Right.
And yeah, and then later on, I was working in a club or several clubs in Vienna as a side work, let's say. So I discovered Vienna from different angles. Yeah, so being in a very good neighborhood and exploring that kind of field, and yeah.
How did you meet Guruji? How did that lead you to spirituality? What was the avenue into that kind of thing?
Well, actually, my parents, they've been always spiritual, so following the Buddhist path for around 20 years. They had also their kind of guide and been to India, but I was more annoyed by that, not really interested. I remember when I did some parties at my home, my mother, she came and she did some ceremonies. I had no clue what she was
During
doing.
the parties?
No. Afterwards, she was saying, I need to clean that place from negative energy. And later on, actually, I understood what was happening around me, because then strange things start to happen. And
Go on, like what?
For example, without talking to my parents, I became vegetarian in the same week. So they invited me for food and said, "Oh, we have only vegetarian food today. Is it a problem for you?" "Oh, no. By the way, I changed my diet from one day to the other. Like I was eating a meal of meat. I was working out a lot at the time. And suddenly I was absolutely disgusted by that. And this
From
was
one day to the next.
Yeah. It was just like one thought appeared, which said, oh my God, it was a living being. How can I eat that? Stopped. And then one thing after the other started to happen. So my interests started to change. Like I was in a subway and suddenly I had strange feelings all over my body, just randomly started to occur. A kind of sensitive person to that kind of phenomenon. And yeah, then was one particular night, was during New Year's Eve. I was playing in a club till 5 o'clock in the morning. And the next day I was absolutely, depressive. Just no orientation in my life, which was already somehow the pinnacle of the weeks before, which was happening. And my mother, she said to me on the 2nd January, you really need to change your life. And I knew. I booked the flight. I said, okay, I will go to India, and sold everything. I had kind of like almost like a house, let's say, with 2 nice garden, very nice neighborhood. But there was no direction. There was nothing fulfilled me really. And then this was actually the begin. So I flew to India. I was an English teacher with very broken English at that time in North India, in the Himalayas. And this was a time, as I remember, when I landed actually in Delhi and I stepped on Indian ground. I just felt, I know this. Like it felt so familiar, like a feeling I never had in Austria, like never. Always felt like an alien in the whole surrounding society, let's put it like this. But when I came to India, something familiar started to come up. And then in the mountains, I was like in a small internet cafe. My mother, she sent me a video of a guru. It was Guruji, was singing kirtan. I was looking at it. I was like, okay, nice. I'm
Your
happy.
Buddhist mother sent you the video of Guruji.
Well, she had also kind of crisis.
Okay.
She was not really satisfied with Buddhism.
Okay.
And she was looking for a guru. So she sent me the video and she had a very deep experience with him here in SPN. And she said, oh, he's different from all the other teachers I've ever met. And I was like, okay, maybe, I don't know. And then only when I came back after several months and met him during a darshan, this made a very strong impact. Yeah.
How old were you at the time?
I was 27. Now I'm 37.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The thing about people changing their life, like, you know, I sell everything one day to the next, and just, I love these kind of stories just because I feel like every time we unpack them, you find different reasons why people do it, positively and negatively, in the sense of what did we find was negative that needed to be, like, that we needed to change away from, and then what ends up being the positive thing that we find and move towards, right? And for everybody who has a story like this, and you'd be shocked how many people in the end just hit a wall and they go, I need to change something in my life. And it's the ones that tend to do it most drastically, like a real cut, that end up succeeding in their new, let's say, effort or new direction. So I want to unpack it a little more before we move on. Like, what gave you the courage or the conviction to do such a big change? Because to sell a house, to really just stop and go somewhere, I'm sure at this point you didn't necessarily have a clear image or idea of what you were going to do instead of the stuff you were doing. So like, what really gives you that clarity, like, I need to change?
It's just this constant emptiness. Yeah, I was surrounded by people, and there was even the conversations, I was starting to become annoyed Yeah, when we've been drunk or I smoked a little bit, people have made fun of me. Oh, you're the philosopher. You're always talking about this stuff, and I had nobody I could talk. And as it is sometimes with parents, it was too much. How to say? I could not really open to them with this topic. So I'm somebody, I need to self-discover the things. I don't want to be told you have to change. A part of the one thing when my mother told me. Right. But there was this strong feeling I need to change. So, and I could not find it in Austria. There was nothing which reminded me of the purpose of life, why we need to change, just desires, meaninglessness, and all this stuff. So, and I remember I was walking up the hill and it felt like a page is turning. And inside of me, I said, wow, a new life is starting now. And I just started to cry, and I was just like, for several minutes, something inside of me was just rejoicing. Just finally that chapter is over. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, what did your friends think at the time?
It was funny, like when I move a little bit more forward to give a better context to that, just the moment I said to my colleagues, I'm vegetarian, you already become an outsider.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like they could not believe, how can you, I was eating steak almost every day, you have to imagine.
Yeah.
And then just a few weeks after I met Guruji, I met my friends, and the question which have been asked, like, are you still smoking? Are you still drinking? Are you still having this? Are you still doing party? And that gave me actually the understanding what is the glue of our friendship. It's just hedonism. It's just pleasure seeking. And that's it. If that's not there anymore, why were we actually having that relationship with each other?
It's interesting when you look at these situations, the kind of different glues that really do bind people together. And sometimes you're lucky and you reach like these friend circles that really push you, like people that are there to uplift each other, to really like inspire and motivate, because like you become friends because you all have the same hobbies or the same interests or the same goals. Maybe like those relationships I tend to see as really the best, because those that you just described, it's like it's almost there's this other magnetism that brings people together, which is I'm trying to almost like numb myself from life. I'm trying to avoid facing the difficult things in life, and then it's like you want to find as many people as possible that are doing the same thing, just so that you feel better about yourself, because deep down you know that what you're doing isn't great. And so you look at people that are doing the same wrong stuff to make you feel more okay about it. And the problem is that the minute one person stops doing that stuff, that like the light turns on for them and they figure out, I probably shouldn't be doing this, like it happened for you. Almost always the reaction from that group is immediately either you bring them straight back down or you've got to cut them off, because it's like if you want to stay in the dark, you can't have a light on in the room. It exposes you, like you would expose your friends in that moment. I'm sure they cut you off in some sense. Did they?
Yeah.
It's always the same. And it's like that. Mediocrity cannot bear excellence. Like people in the dark don't want to be around people in the light. People who want to go left don't want to be around people who want to go right. It makes them self-aware to a point of discomfort. So, on the fact that you made this shift based off of the fact that you were feeling without direction, sort of aimless in a sense, you meet Guruji, had a big impact in your life. Talk me through a little bit like those first sort of months or first period of following him, because for sure, I mean, now we're talking, years later, but at that time, how was the whole adaptation for you, like of becoming this person and following Guruji and getting involved in all of that? How was it for you?
I remember the time when I was in India. I went to North India. I was in the mountains. It was cold. I was alone in a room with families which I didn't know, but I absolutely loved it. I just had my books, and I had the feeling like, what I was doing my whole life. Like I was just soaking it in, the knowledge. And at that time I was reading the life of Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was a story like he has his students around him and he's just giving kata. And I just had the feeling like I need a teacher, somebody who is perfect. Somebody is not just who learned it from books. And I made that conviction, no matter what, I will fly to that place where this kind of being exists. And just shortly after, my mother, she sent me the video. Then I met her in the darshan. She with the tilak, sari. When I saw her, I had a feeling like, okay, she's in a sect.
Yeah.
It was very strange to see my mother, but also she was very happy. Yeah. And then Guruji came. He was giving dynamic darshan. For the ones who doesn't know it, he's walking around, looking in the eyes of the people, and people
blessing
can
them, yeah,
blessing them,
ask questions on different things at times.
And just shortly before, somebody told me, by the way, he's an enlightened being. Like, oh, really? I didn't know that. So I wanted to test it out. And then I said, you can ask him something internally. And the only thing, the moment he came closer, my heart was just beating. And I asked him, at the time he gave darshan on the third eye, I just asked him, who am I? And the moment his hand touched my head, something happened which I never felt in my life before. Like I felt so much love. I was like, almost I could not breathe. It was so shocking. And I just could not stop laughing. Just for 2 hours, I was just laughing like a small boy. I was like, what's happening with me? And that, of course, when you have this kind of experience, there is something inside of you which wants to explore more. Who is he?
Yeah.
And so on. Yeah.
Well, I find it amazing. First of all, like that it's funny how people are. You see your mom with a tilak and a sari, and it's like she's in a sect, but you just came back from India, literally, right?
Mm.
So clearly, like saris was something that you had been seeing and been around. But the thing is that we're so, like, we have our expectations of how things have to be, and then a minute it's like, okay, this is a Western lady now wearing a sari, something's wrong, like something's off. And then she's in a sect, and the next thing that happens is you're laughing for 2 hours straight, and it's like, well, who's the crazy person now? You know, and it's just funny how in a sense our attempt to understand, you know, our experience, the experience of others, arrives at so many preconceived ideas and judgments before we understand it for ourselves and then have an experience. Like, because I'm sure after you had your experience, your suspicion that she was in a cult diminished. If not, evaporated completely. Interesting. You know, I remember when I had some of my early, like, darshans, not my first one, but, you know, early on, when you told me you were laughing for like 2 hours, I was like, oh, that would have been nicer. I had one where I cried for like 2 hours, and I was just sitting there crying, and I didn't understand why I was crying, just for no reason, just sitting there like, as if something was just coming out from somewhere, like just completely, to this day, unknown. I have no idea why, but just 2 hours straight at least crying. And I was like, okay, God, couldn't we have done the laughing? That would have been more fun. But anyway, I assume then if you're characterizing that part of your life as being something that was like, you know, meaningless, you found meaning with Guruji, with this path. What's your meaning look like to you right now? Like, how do you understand your life's purpose?
One of the things we just see throughout the years, I know him, that Guruji is purifying our intentions. Like from theory, then you have the practicality, to something which slowly starts to manifest inside of one. And that's something which is beautiful to see. And because what I was aiming for before, I was just looking at my body, how do I feel good? In Austria, often you hear when you want to do something with your friends, the first question is, what does it bring it to me? Yeah.
What do you get from it?
What do I get from that?
Mm-hmm.
It's so ingrained in the culture. Whatever you do, there's always the first question, what do I get from that?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was normal. And now being with Guruji and him giving me the knowledge, what is my aim? To serve people, serve society, serve God, and to discover myself, the relationship with God. And I remember when I knew Guruji, maybe for 1 year or something, I was sitting in the living room and just watching a satsang of him. And he said, the purpose of life is to have a relationship with God. And I heard that and I was just in panic. I was just, oh my God, I have no relationship to God. What have I done my whole life? I was just running around in the whole flat and just talking to myself like, oh my God, I have no relationship with God. What have I done my whole life? And of course, I see it also as a part of His grace to give us these impulses, these awakened feelings. It doesn't come just from somewhere. And this is what I see, that slowly these qualities are manifesting and everything manifests naturally. Yeah. It's like I remember, I think it was in Yogananda. So one of his disciples, he had a crazy lifestyle and he was invited into the ashram. And he asked Yogananda, should I change all this, what I'm doing? He said, no, you don't need to. But naturally, you will want to change it.
Mm.
And that's what I see. Guruji is strict very often, yes. But I see inside of me, I want to change. I want to move forward. And that's the beauty I see. Yeah.
It's a really interesting point, because I think it's one of the big differences between Sanatana Dharma and many of the other religions in this world is like, if the religion gives you a set of rules and your entry into the afterlife and paradise is contingent on you following and obeying these rules, the problem with this is you will obey them because of what you want to get from that, but not because it necessarily aligns with your values and your let's say state of consciousness or whatever it is. It's like, I obey this, I'll get that, so I'll put up with this, I'll tolerate these rules and restrictions and whatever else because I just want that. And the cool thing about that example that you gave with Yogananda, and I know this from our own life with Guruji, and it's like, because the journey is a journey of almost consciousness, of raising our consciousness, elevating our consciousness, purifying our consciousness perhaps, these things become natural to us as you develop, as you grow. Like, for example, if you tell somebody you have to become vegetarian because otherwise God won't love you, otherwise you won't get to Vaikuntha, you have to be vegetarian. The person might even do it because they really want Vaikuntha or they want God to love them, but it's done out forced. It was definitely not out of love. It's not natural. It's unnatural, right? On the flip side, if you just start to elevate your consciousness, if you start to build a relationship with God, you will start to perceive God more and more, and you'll start to respect God's creation more and more. And I strongly believe that there will be a natural state that you arrive in where, like happened to you, you just go, I don't want to anymore. Whether it's a rule or not a rule is irrelevant to me. I am in a state of consciousness where I don't want to kill animals or participate in that or eat living beings or whatever it may be. And so many of these quote unquote rules that exist in religious paths and spiritual paths, I feel like in Sanatana Dharma, because we're talking about a lifetime's situation, we're talking about a much larger span of time, and we're talking about, like I said, a journey of consciousness, not so much a test of one life, right? It really allows you to take your time and to arrive at things naturally. And like you said, not because someone told you to, because it might not be your nature to do what people tell you to do, right? But from my experience, even when I have been told to do things, even by Guruji, right? He says, I want you to be like this and like that. You do it because it's Guruji, but there's a part of you that it notices the resistance inside of you and feels like, until I can get rid of that resistance, this is never going to give me the fruits that I'm meant to get from this path. Like, I'm never truly going to prosper until I find a way of raising my consciousness, of changing my life to a point where I will naturally want to be like this. I'll naturally want to do it. I don't need to be told to do it. And Guruji said that to me once. It was about temple. It was about prayers. He said, I tell you to go to prayers. I tell everybody to go to prayers. But what I really want is that I don't have to tell you to go to prayers because you want to go to prayers. I will tell you because it's my job to push you all, to motivate you all. But the true sign of your growing relationship with God is that I'll no longer need to tell you because you'll want to. You will want to. And I find that so real, so beautiful. Like, and I find it in some sense to be the only authentic way of living. It's like you go to someone on the street and you want to convert them to spirituality. I'm as much as I understand the principle behind it. Like, if you have something beautiful, share it. If you have something amazing, try to help somebody. And part of me believes in that. I'm doing this podcast. I mean, part of me believes that there's value in sharing something with people that maybe haven't heard these things before. But there's another part of me that really dislikes the whole process because of how unnatural it sometimes feels. And my point is, I know that person is not going to change until they figure out for themselves that they need to change. I can tell them 100 times, change. You need to change. Your life is meaningless. But they need to hit that head against the wall 1 time, 5 times, 10 times until they go, what am I doing with my life? And then they walk around the room saying, I don't have a relationship with God. Or whatever their moment is, you understand? Where it's like, and then I want to be available for them to, once they have figured out for themselves, I want to change, that they can come to you, that they can come to me and they can go, can you help me? Can you show me a way? Can you explain how you did it? Can you, put me in touch with your guru? Can you teach me something? Like, that's cool. I like that. I really do. But I feel like that's everything you've shared with me. For me, feels like everything happened at its natural pace. You became vegetarian. You realized your life wasn't working. You made a change. And then you came to see Guruji. And everything just comes up internally. And then you follow. And then you follow. You know what I mean? And I just feel like how to transmit that to people, like how to help them see that there is life after a brave change. Because I feel some people are ready for it, but they're just not brave enough. Like, they're scared because so much has to change in their life, You said something earlier that I think is related to this point. You said that when you were working, I think in the hotel with celebrities and different people of that nature, that it somehow was something that also, now looking back, I think from the position of life that you're in now, is interesting to reflect on sort of what you saw. Maybe share with us a little bit, like, what was your impression of what you saw there? What was the kind of experiences that you had in relation to this topic of, meaning and the difference, the contrast, right, of what you were doing before and what you're doing now? How do you see that?
Yeah, as I said before, it really helped me to get a deeper understanding, because for some people, celebrities or the people which I met, this is like the pinnacle what you can achieve in society. You are famous, you have a lot of money, you have a good career, and people look up to you.
Yeah.
But I have seen people, I will not say the names, in specific situations of their life which they want to hide from society.
Right.
Yeah. Very, closed environments where they had their own private parties doing stuff which normally other people should not know. And for me, this was also gave me an understanding, okay, maybe I can achieve that also if I want, but they are still unhappy. They came to a party and the first thing, they just needed the first glass of wine or champagne or whatever. Otherwise, they don't feel comfortable being in that environment. There was just food, drinks, sometimes the conversations which I overheard them goes a kind of also really in a really bad direction. Yeah, what they're doing on vacations and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And this maybe helped me to go also in that kind of purpose crisis. Yeah, because for example, what kids are doing, they put their posters of their idols on the wall. You have movie stars, you have different singers. Then I started to a bit explore in that field. How is their private life of celebrities in Hollywood, famous singers and so on. And there was really like this, is there somebody outside who is really just pure love, goodness, all what people are actually striving for? Because people are constantly disappointed by politicians, by decisions from in I don't know, different fields where they're affected, and then one time in 4 years you can make your vote, and then you think, oh, I made a change.
I influenced something. Mm-hmm.
But nobody really wants to look at what can I change. Yeah. So
if I can, there's when I was 16, we used to have a thing at school which is like a work experience. So for 1 week you go and work somewhere just to get a work experience. And I worked at a fancy hotel for a week, and there was a wedding of a famous football player at the time. And so all his friends, all the other players came for the wedding, etc. They did the wedding, and then there was the after party. And then I had to leave sort of early on, but one of my family members was also working at that time at the hotel. They stayed on and witnessed everything that went on in that party. And they came home and they were like, yeah, so basically all those players you're watching on TV, they were all just snorting cocaine, doing like everything you can imagine, like falling on the floor, completely passed out, drunk, whatever. And you just look at this and you think, like how much the public persona and the image is so curated and so edited and in a sense like presented, because these people, like you said, they represent somehow the pinnacle of material life. These people are success. When you're starting out, when you're young, when you're trying to do something with your life, you look at these people and think, I wish I could be like them. And then you see these things and you just go, I don't want to be anything like them. Like, this is crazy. Like, these people have, as you said, they can't even be okay by themselves without getting drunk because they can't stand to not be numb to themselves, And I think it's funny. I never gave it too much sort of thought at that time because I think it was coinciding with meeting Guruji anyway. It was around the same time. So that shift was already happening for me. But looking back and hearing what you just said, I think a lot of people are still sort of under this illusion that what goes on in these places or these kind of people are really amazing and it's incredible and this is what we should all aim for. And it's just more than any other time, I think we are in a crisis of real profound meaning. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally can subscribe to that. And
what do you think is the reason?
Yeah, one thing is, of course, people don't know who they are. They think they are the body, the intellect, the ego. Ignorance. Like, they have no knowledge about themselves, the true selves. People are also, if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, religious perspective, especially, I can say it from Austria, people are very disappointed by religion itself. Yeah, they see it causes very often just wars or even more problems. Why should I subscribe to that? Who is telling the truth actually? Then also what we just described, if you see your so-called idols and they also are not happy, what should I strive for? Yeah, this nihilism, is there any meaning in life? So people are just, they just go to work, They have their families or no families. Nowadays, it's very common. Not really
True.
strive for families also. Just to have some career. We just spoke about famous people. I think there was a study in America where they asked youngsters what you want to become.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember, it was like 90% of them said, I want to become famous and rich.
Yeah.
But how many become actually famous and rich?
Yeah, 1% if that. Yeah.
So we see, I think the world right now needs especially something like purpose. And this is also something where I see Guruji, Bhakti Marga, and myself, when I can share a little bit of this light, what you just said before, and invite them in something, there is some deeper meaning in life. For example, recently I was in Austria, and of course they see me as a monk dressed, and they have a specific image, what I'm doing. And he was very straightforward. I liked it. He said, what's your mission? Why are you actually here? Are you preaching? You want to convert people? You want to bring them into your religion?
Fair question.
And I liked it when somebody's straightforward, not hiding. So I could be clear with him. I said, just that we apply the concept of reincarnation in Hinduism, I don't have that strong urge to save people. I don't need to go around, tell the good news, so they're condemned to hell, but it's an invitation into a different perspective of life. Yeah? Who are you? There is God, a loving God who loves you really dearly. Yeah? There is a purpose in life, and you can have a relationship with that supreme being, which is, and you just open that door, and then they themselves, they can, and I told him, you make your journey by yourself, in your pace, this self-discovery. And that's why I think the life which I had before, this contrast, helps a lot in conversations, because living fully into that society with no purpose and aim, just working, and now I can make the comparison. Then all this, let's say, bouquet around, like having rules or going to the temple, doing some specific worship, just makes sense. It's not just some fancy add-ons to your life or more burden to your life, but it has a specific purpose why you're doing that, because it strengthens your goal, what you want to achieve in life.
Yeah, for sure. It will make you relatable to people, you know, this sort of background. Do you know what's interesting, though? It's funny, this thing about, you know, being a monk, whenever I was thinking now while you were speaking, I've been challenged at different times, you know, like, so you're saying I have to become a monk like you to find purpose and to live a happy life? And I said, of course not, right? And then they say, but you know, the reason why you all, me, and they would probably say this about you as well, why you felt disillusioned with life and now you feel full of purpose. You didn't get married, you didn't have a family, you didn't have children, you don't know how fulfilling that is and how much that really adds meaning to your life, you know, like a true family that you love and cares for you and that you're responsible for, etc. And here's the thing, here's where I take exception to this type of thing. Do you know how many people I have to talk to and support and speak to who have exactly those things, who are married, and they want to divorce their husbands, or they want to divorce their wives, they don't feel good about it, or they have already divorced once, twice, 3 times, or they are stuck in a marriage that they don't have enough courage to get out of because they're afraid of what comes next, but they're not happy. How many parents come to me saying, my kid used to be so sweet and now they're 16 and they can't stand me anymore, they don't want to talk to me, our relationship is terrible. I've had parents coming to me and saying, my child beats me, but I love my child, I can't do anything, I don't want to report them to the police, right? Now, am I characterizing it as if this is all that's going on and this is always the case? Of course not. But the fact that it does happen only tells me one thing, that it can happen. And my problem there is that if these marriages can go wrong, and they do so often, we have the percentages. If the children relationships can go wrong, as they do, then my concern is not to tell you you can't do those things, it's to tell you you can't base your life on those things. That's the real fundamental point that people miss, in my opinion. I'm not saying you can't get married. I'm not saying you can't have kids. I'm not saying you can't pursue celebrityhood and get a job and all these nice careers and all these things. The problem is if you make that your ideal and put it on your altar in your heart and say, that is life, then what happens when that turns sour, like in all these people's cases that came and spoke to me over the years as a Swami? I've heard a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things. And my only thing I have to tell to them is, you better have a relationship with God to fall back on when that happens. Because that's the beauty of God. That's the beauty of being in a relationship with, as you said, a perfect being. Is that they don't wake up one morning and decide that they don't love you anymore. They don't wake up one morning and decide that they don't want to hear what you have to say anymore and start beating you. God is always there, ready to love you back, to reciprocate your love and to guide you and support you and push you when you need to be pushed and hold you when you need to be held. And I'm saying to them, if you have that, then feel free to venture into family life and careers and whatever else you want, because you'll not be dependent on those things for your meaning. Those are just bonuses, extras, service even perhaps. Opportunities to serve. You have a nice family, you make nice children who will also become a benefit to this world. You raise them as devotees of God, or people who do good in this world. Like, that's beautiful service. But if that's your purpose, I'll pray for you. Because I don't want you to end up like these stories that I've met and encountered. I know what it was like. I was 7 years old when my parents divorced. Right? My parents divorced when I was 7. I dealt with it pretty okay. Don't get me wrong. Like, I was probably more mature than I should be at that time. And of course, to the credit of my parents also. But I'm not going to lie. I wasn't happy about it. Like, I wasn't like, oh, this is how it's meant to be. I knew that something was wrong. My parents aren't supposed to want to split up. And then one of my parents was living in one continent, and then I moved with my other parent to another continent halfway across the world, right? And yet that is reality. And the problem I have is that people look at something like that and everything I just shared, and they'll say, yeah, but that's life. That's normal. It happens. That's the risk. That's the beauty of life. That it's a gamble, it's a risk. And it's like, tell that to the person that loses that gamble, that gambles their life and loses. Tell it to that person that it's beautiful. That's life. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it goes back to that story of your friends looking at you and saying, you still drink? You still smoke? Everybody wants to keep everybody else down in the same problem, because then everybody just feels good about the nonsense they're doing. And the satsang you heard from Guruji, the problem is people don't have a relationship with God. As simple as it is, that's it. It's the only thing. So it leads me to my next question to you, which is, now that you do have a relationship with God, share. I mean, I have my own insights, but share. I would like to hear, and I think people should hear, what do you feel? What do you feel on a day-to-day basis that just really is the biggest difference? Like, from not just meaning, but okay, you didn't have meaning, now you found meaning, but what has that specific meaning done for you as a person? Like, how have you changed in a sense?
I think a lot. It's out. I mean, behind that clothes, I have a normal body like everybody else. Yeah, I'm a human being. And sometimes we are labeled like only as, okay, you are that monk. This is your role. And one of the things which is good being a monk, I don't need to stand in front of the cupboard every day and just thinking for half hour, what should I dress today? So they're very practical.
Simple living,
yeah. But when I see, for example, why people are going into a relationship, so myself also, I think, or I had the feeling I was in a relationship where my partner, she wanted to have a relationship just not to be alone. Yeah. There was this, you need to make me happy. Yeah. This kind of relationship. And especially my last relationship, there was already when I started to know Guruji, I was more and more reading his books, meditating. She was complaining, why always meditating? You always... And I was really straightforward to her. And I told her, God is number one, you're number two.
They love to hear that.
Yeah. Well,
How much longer did the relationship last after that?
actually, I knew her very long. Since I was 18, there was like a coming and going.
Right.
We spent even time in India. But I knew that at some point we need to split. So this was also, it happened in India. It was a specific moment where we had a fight, often. And then we just could not split. There was like a very strong emotional attachment.
Right.
But there was no love anymore. And suddenly she just poked me with her finger into my forehead and she said, "You're so dumb." And for me, it was like a blank, like I didn't know her. Not like, I recognized her, but all these emotional attachments, everything disappeared in that moment. And there was just absolute clarity. When we go back, it's finished. And she said to me on the next day, "I don't know what happened yesterday. Something strange happened." And then...
Interesting. Wow.
And this was the moment where I finally could actually go more into where I'm living now, being as a monk.
Sure.
But it came with clarity. Yeah. So I remember when I wanted to decide, should I have a family or a monk? And so Swami Kurunanda gave me a very good tip. He said, just sit down and envision the future yourself having a family and visualize yourself being a monk. Where does it feel better? And for me, it was clear being a monk. So we had an event here in the ashram, and I was still kind of struggling. Kind of inside of me, I knew I want to become a monk, but it was still not this strong decision. And I was sitting there, crowd full of people, depressed, like nothing was moving left or right. And I said, okay, I decide now in this moment, I want to become a monk and I will not move from my decision. And suddenly, for the first time after several months, I just felt this peace inside of me. Finally, you made a decision. And Guruji just 2 minutes later, he goes through that big crowd and I see him with his laser eyes looking. And he's looking for me. He just calls me, come closer, and he says, "Do you want to tell me something?" And this was happening a couple of times, that he reciprocates when we are clear.
Yeah.
In the outside something happens. He's waiting literally that we are brave enough, we have made our decision, okay, let me help you. So
because some things I really think have to come from our side, and this is one of the great things about him, is that he waits for you to be ready, right? And he helps you get ready, but he's essentially waiting for you to be ready. The minute he sees you're ready, he'll come. Like he'll prompt, or he'll create the situation or the circumstances. Earlier I laughed when you said that you told your girlfriend that God is number one, you're number two. And then I was thinking, but actually that's how it should be. Even in like a healthy marriage, a healthy relationship of like devotees or whatever, God should be number one, of course. And I just laughed. Like, it's funny. There's a way to do it, or there's a time in the relationship when if you say something like that, it's really like, it's a killer. But at the same time, the best relationships are the ones that are constructed exactly like that. And it's funny because in my own life, I remember even moments in my family, like with my parents or with my mom or family, just saying to them, like, to me, God is number one, and family comes later or whatever. And they didn't take it badly. I mean, they agreed with me. But even when there's agreement, we both agree that that's the right way to organize life. There's still this feeling of like, You know what I mean? And it's funny. It's just funny how human beings.
You want to be the number one.
Yeah. It's like how much we are programmed to want to be number one in everything we do. And I was thinking also just now as you was talking about your decision to become a monk. So it can come across to people, and I don't want it to, that we're saying because we're monks, we have purpose in our life. And it's not that. We have purpose in our life because we have a relationship with God. And the monk thing is a lifestyle we've chosen to support that purpose, to support that decision, a choice we made. Because I know monks who have the same crisis of meaning that you're talking about, who have the same depression that people go through. And they're monks. And it's because I think, to clarify also for the listeners and the viewers, when I say meaning, I think the word meaning is often interchangeable with purpose, right? And to me, meaning and purpose means that which drives you to act. Like, what motivates action out of you? Like, why do you get up in the morning, in a sense? Why do you do the things you do? You know? And in the Gita, one of the things that always stood out to me at first was how Krishna is criticizing Arjuna for his meaning, his purpose almost. It's like, why do you do the things you do? And it seems to be for personal gain. Because the whole of chapter 1, he's just concerned about what happens to me, what am I going to do, what am I going to cause to happen to the other people around me, and reputation and all these sorts of things. And it's almost like this, you're acting out of desire. You're acting out of personal agendas. You're acting out of whatever. That's your meaning, therefore, is to protect your image, boost your reputation, advance your own career, like this type of thing. And then comes somehow this instruction of like, don't act out of that, act out of a sense of duty, right? And I remember having a conversation with a resident here once. And they were asking me something about the Gita. It was about, they were studying and they just wanted to theoretically understand something. And they were saying, so Krishna tells Arjuna not to act motivated by desire, right? And I said, yeah. So then what should we act motivated by? And I said, well, duty. And they were like, yeah, but come on. Like, nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, duty. I can't wait to perform my duty today. Duty drives me forward. And then I just sort of took a step back and I laughed and I said, yeah, of course it's not duty. Duty is what you have to do, but it's not why you do it. Yeah. And then I thought, why is it? What is it then? What is the drive? And then I thought, oh, it's love. Love is the motivation. And I said it to the person. I said, well, I think the reason is love. And then the person said something cool. They said, okay, cool, I'll tell my mom. Because she was studying and she was helping her mom study, I think. And then she goes to her mom in private and they have a conversation and she comes back. And she says, my mom asked a really good question. My mom asked, what if the person doesn't feel love? Or what if the person doesn't know love? So they understand theoretically what you're saying, that don't do things for personal, gain and desire and selfishness. Like, that isn't good. And they understood. But they don't have love inside their hearts yet. That doesn't make them get up in the morning. What then? And I thought, actually, I know that feeling. I know this feeling of like, something's bad and you don't want to do it because you know it's bad, but you don't yet have the solution either. You're in this middle zone, like this no man's land somehow, where you're like, I'm aware of the problem, but I don't yet have the thing that replaces the problem to make me feel good. And so I spoke to Guruji and I said to him, I have my ideas, because I had some theories, but I said, what would you say to somebody if they don't yet have that love? And he said, then just be good. Do it for the sake of being good. And he said, it's amazing how much that can fulfill you. How good you will feel being good. Do it because it's the right thing to do, because it's your nature to be a good person. By nature, you are kind, you are gentle, you are compassionate, you are these things. So when you get up and you tell yourself, today I'm going to be good, he said, actually that always ends up in love and a relationship in God, because what is the origin of goodness? Like where do all these good morals and good ethics and good qualities come from? from God. God is the source of those things. And so the more you start to live those good qualities, to be respectful, to be punctual, to be whatever, kind, and all these things, you start to almost like pull on the rope of kindness, and then you find who's holding it on the other end, and it's God, right? And then suddenly the love is there. And I loved it because I just thought, that's something I can tell people. If you don't yet feel like you're ready to love God, then be good. Like do goodness, do kind things, help people, serve people, put a smile on someone's face. Do something that is diametrically opposed to the selfishness that you were living before, and feel the difference, taste the difference, you know? And so what I wanted to ask you is, because it's something I've experienced and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. When I was becoming spiritual, I had my ambitions and goals and whatever, and eventually they all started falling apart as well. Like you want to be famous spiritually also, and you want to be special, and then you realize that those things, they don't really exist in a sense, right? They're not what we think they are, like the celebrities in the real world. And then I found my joy in service, in seva. Now you've been in the ashram here for many, many years. I know that nobody gets to live in this ashram without doing a lot of seva. So I'd actually like to hear a bit from you about your seva experience. Like what has been your experience doing seva for the Sangha, for the mission, for Guruji all these years?
Yeah, I liked what you said. I definitely take it for further conversations. Yeah, I mean, I was in different departments, and seva is something you need to experience. Yeah, I remember I made talk in Vienna, and I was talking just about seva, the concept of seva. And people looked at me, they liked what I was saying, but still it didn't make click. Yeah. And then I said, you need to experience, which is true. Because normally what is driving you to perform certain action? Yeah. You want to have specific fruits for that.
What do I get from it?
What do you get from it? And suddenly you're here and you just do things like cooking, washing dishes, you're doing in a garden and so on for free. Yeah. And why are you doing that? And actually, that's the main point, because you start to discover other intentions. You need to find other intentions. And then, actually, this reminds me of that story what Guruji was saying about the doctor, and he was very unhappy. And
I think I know the one, but share.
Yeah.
It's a nice story.
And he went to a sage and he asked, what should I do to become more happy? And then he said, okay, just one day in a week, you will not charge any money for that, what you're doing. So he started to do that. And shortly after, I think he even increased the days. Yeah. And then this was the remedy for his depression, so-called, because he forgot about himself. He didn't expect anything. And like that, this natural happiness started to grow.
But isn't that a funny thing? Like you're doing the same thing. He was a doctor. He continued being a doctor. But in one case, you're just getting some money for it. And in the other case, you're not. And suddenly you're just way more happy. There's something there, man. There's like this feeling of you don't even need to change what you're doing. The same thing. You just don't get any money back. And suddenly you realize, I'm not doing this for myself anymore because I don't get anything from this. And ironically, it's when you're not doing it for yourself that you benefit the most, because now you're a happy guy. But the courage to do something like that in this society. Anyway, I interrupted you, sorry.
Yeah, and in the ashram was first in sadhana department, now yoga meditation, Swami Tulsidas, nice time. Then other departments, more, more physical strength. I was in construction just for 1 month.
You were in construction? I don't remember this. Really?
Yeah. I was just helping to clean the garbage from the construction guys when they built the house of Guruji.
Okay, cool.
And I was in housekeeping for 6 months. Then I was in HR, human resources. Again, like banking, I really didn't like it.
Office work, right?
There really I needed to find, I do it for God. I really do it for God. And then in events with Swami Priya, Swami Drishti.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the middle of the office. It was a funny time.
Strong characters.
Yeah, strong characters. And then came COVID. And this was actually the time where we needed to restructure everything. So
And we went online.
we went online. Yeah. So
you were doing the online stuff, right?
So online the department didn't exist at that time. Yeah. So then online darshan started, and Guruji gave online events. So we built up that department slowly. Yeah. In my room, also with other teammates, sometimes not feeling well. I had COVID like 2 times or something.
Me too. Me too.
And everybody was isolated, and it was an interesting time. But now we say it's the not post-COVID time.
Yeah, post-COVID.
Yeah. And now look at it. What happened? I think Bhakti Marga made really huge loops in video, audio, all these productions. I'm just a small part of that, but I think that's how people can actually get his knowledge, because spirituality became modern. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I'm 100% on board with everything that we're doing in this online, on an online level. I mean, I recorded a podcast in the States with Namras, devotee from ISKCON. Lovely conversation. And one of the topics that came up was that it's how present we are now online, Bhakti Marga, and how that is in contrast to the sort of physical stuff. And I just said, well, look, of course there's pros and cons, right? The physical stuff is sometimes more profound. It's more impactful, more meaningful. Like you can really talk to somebody, connect and do things together. The kirtan live is not the same as kirtan on the internet. And there's clear and obvious benefits and reasons to do things in person. But the truth is, you spend a lot of hours and a lot of money and you do an event and 50 people show up in person because of the venue limitations, because of logistical difficulties. You do the same thing online and you get thousands of people, and you just go for a fraction of the budget, for a fraction of the time, for a fraction of the resources, and something just clicks where you go, look, it's not an either or situation. It's a both. But the online one, you're just reaching more souls, you're reaching more people, you're impacting more lives. I mean, you came to Guruji because you saw a video of his. And that was at a time when we weren't necessarily super online, driven. And I still think there's lots of progress to be made there. Lots more we can do, and different ways that we can bring the love of God and the love that Guruji brings to us, this meaning that he fills our life with, to more and more people with this online stuff. It's a cool seva. It's definitely a cool seva. It's amazing how, I was listening to you now and I was like, how many sevas we all go through in SPN. Like you go through a career of seva in the ashram, and you just go from the most random things like housekeeping, construction, gardens, and then HR, and then online events. And it's like, how'd you go from construction to online events? And it's just so funny how it all happens. But there was something you said that I think is interesting, because you were saying HR reminded you of the banking thing, and it's really like, I'm doing this for God, I'm doing this for God. And I think as much as seva is seva, it's selfless and it's all about, service, I still think everybody has their natural fit, and everybody has that seva that they're meant to be doing, And I know it maybe shouldn't be like that. If we were all saints, any seva is seva, and we don't care what we do. There is no, like or dislike. There's no attraction or aversion, etc. But I think there's something to be said for when you find your purpose, I think in a smaller way, not your higher purpose of making a relationship with God like we've been discussing, but I think it's true as I've observed life that, on a functional level, on a seva level, we all have our purpose, and it sometimes takes really long to find it, to click, like that thing where you just go, it's so perfect, like that person is made for this, But I think it exists. And I think it's like, you can tell when you're not in it. Maybe you haven't found it yet, but you can tell when you haven't found it. Like, some people ask, it's that famous question Guruji gets the most, what's my dharma? And they don't mean, what's my, higher purpose in life, that I should love God. They mean like, what should I be doing with my 9 to 5 every day of my life? Like, what should I be busy with? And it's funny, like, some people, I look at them and I'm like, you still haven't found it. And they've been doing this for years, and you're just like, it's fine. Don't get me wrong. It's good, making progress, whatever. But you still feel like there's something there. There's some untapped potential or something where a click hasn't yet happened. And timing is everything. I remember when I was, 19, living here. I was, my seva was to, we still had DVDs at that time. No Netflix, no, none of this stuff. So we were watching DVDs, and we used to sell DVDs in the shop of events from Guruji, satsangs, whatever. And my job was to take the master copy of whatever video was made and just copy them to put them in the boxes to sell in the shop. So I would sit there, and we would put the DVD in, and we put a blank disc, and then I'd go in the computer and burn from one to the other, and then take it out and put the next one in, and just do that all day. Yeah. And at some point, I just thought, I can't do this anymore. Like, just... like it's so boring and repetitive and not special. And so I went to Guruji and I was like, Guruji, I don't think that I was born to do this. Like, I don't know that this is my life dharma. And he just looked at me like I was the biggest idiot in the room. And he's like, yeah, of course you weren't born to copy DVDs, but that's what you need to do right now. Like, it's just something that you're doing to help out. Like, why are you stressing? You're 19. It was kind of this stupid feeling of like, heh? And then he said to me, look, everything in life has timing. It has the right time where things fall into place. But in the meanwhile, take these opportunities, these seva opportunities, as practice. You're practicing to be selfless, and you're practice to learn to love what you do as most you can. So that when you really do find yourself ready to take on your life's dharma, your life's purpose, you know what it is to be selfless, and you know what it is to love what you do. That's it. So just put your head down, stop complaining, and go burn those DVDs, right? And I think there's something to be said for that. I really think your journey, my journey, the purpose that we have found, but at the same time, I'm still going to say the purpose we're yet to find in some sense. Because in the higher level, I think we're both clear, right? But like how things change. A year ago, I didn't have this podcast. Now I have this podcast. Who knows what you're going to be doing a year from now? And I think about those things sometimes. I'm like, what's God cooking for us? What's he preparing? Yeah. Amara, this was a great conversation. I'm happy we had this chance to exchange it. There's some stuff there I didn't know about you for sure. Anything you want to share with the people? I think I'd like you to share something. Like, if somebody hears this, what you said, and they feel like it resonates with them, like I'm feeling like I need to make a change in my life. Like, what is the one thing you would say that they should take away from your experiences?
I would say we need to make a purpose of our life. Like, for when I was recently in Austria, and I asked in the people in the room, do you think, is there any purpose in life? Is there any higher meaning? And everybody said yes. But we don't really go in that direction. We don't want to find the answers, or the landscape is too big. Yeah, where should I even start? And I think the experience which we can give to people, that there is a divine personality, divine being walking now on planet Earth, sharing his knowledge, sharing his love with the people. At least check it out, try it. Yeah, I was so frustrated. I remember when I was saying, there is an enlightened being in Germany in spring. It's just around the corner. Why you don't want to visit him? Just for one darshan. And the excuses which I received, I was like, I was so frustrated. I could not understand. Are you serious? Like, he's just here. Because I see the changes, that the experiences which he gave me. Like, I have almost like a book of, because I write everything down. Everything, all the experiences. And this I never experienced before him. So either it's a huge coincidence, or there is something. And I look at this and I was thinking, I want that you have also just a little bit of that. Why you don't want to try it? Yeah, just adventure for yourself. And yeah, I think that's it. Just, and that's the beauty, to discover there is a loving being, there is God who loves you, who places you here on earth. We just discussed random things like burning CDs, but you can do everything, like in the Gita is so beautifully described. You do your duty, but there is a meaning in that. Yeah, everything, all the actions just brings you closer to your goal of life. Yeah. So the Bhagavad Gita helped me a lot. Yeah, to discover. Like, for example, just recently was a Mataji. She came to the ashram. She just had the call inside of her. Something started to change. She came here randomly, and she received the Bhagavad Gita, and she told me she was reading it outside in the garden, and she was I think in chapter 16. It's like, wow, you're in chapter 16. She was just 2 days here, and I thought she was just skipping the chapters. And she said, I don't know what's happening. I wake up in the morning and I just want to read the Bhagavad Gita. Nothing else. I never had this feeling my entire life that normally I don't read books.
Right.
But something which captured me to dive into that. And I think that's the beauty of that, when you start to discover this self journey, which I was saying before. That's it. Just that is worth to explore it. This, what you discover, because inside what we have is unlimited. Outside, what you can discover, career, that and here, there is always some limit to that. But here, yeah.
Love it. Be brave, prioritize real purpose and real meaning. No rubbish excuses, Austrians and everybody else. It's true. I've had some. There's one lady, she said to me, I'd love to come meet your guru, but who's going to look after my cat? And I just looked at her and I said, with all due respect, you telling me you have a crisis in your life, I'm giving you a solution. You like the solution, but you can't, because who's going to feed your cat? And I said, if you can't see the tragedy in that situation, look a little harder. And she just looked at me like, what a terrible way to end the episode. But no, I think what you said is beautiful. People need to just give themselves a chance, in a sense. I don't even say give Guruji a chance. Guruji is here to show you, to introduce you to the real you, and to really make you flourish, and to bring out the best version of you, the best version of me. So you really have to give yourself a chance. You have to believe in what you're feeling and just go for it. Nice that you shared your story. Appreciate it very much. Hopefully we'll do another one.
Thank you very much.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.